49ers and the Texans. Huge lead for the Niners right now in the second quarter, with under 8 minutes left. The 49ers lead 14-0. Matt Schaub, he just does not look comfortable right now as he threw an early pick six, and they scored another touchdown. But right now it's 14-0 49ers down in San Francisco. And tonight at 11:35 p.m. That's going to be a wonderful kickoff for everyone on the East Coast staying up late. The Chargers and the Raiders, two teams that are actually playing really well so far. I think Phillip Rivers is playing out of his mind right now, throwing for over 300 yards. Pretty much, he's averaging a little under 300 yards in his first 4 games. And playing a Raiders team that really is, as 1-3, they aren't as terrible as people think. Terrell Pryor is actually a pretty good quarterback when he's able to move out of the pocket. Big guy, 6'5", little over 200 pounds, can move really well. And considering that offensive line is absolutely terrible in Oakland, you need to play well. You need to move the ball well in order to have any success against this Chargers defense. And escaping from out of the pocket is something that Pryor was known for at Ohio State. And he's had success, but obviously because he's been injury prone recently, especially against Denver where he had that concussion, wouldn't come back a couple weeks ago. The Raiders actually have a chance to move to 2-3, and again, this early on in the season, really, there's so much to be looking forward to later in the season. Just looking at some preview matches for next week, some exciting matchups. Really, if you thought the Lions and Browns would actually be an exciting game, it is. Both teams are 3-2. Cleveland's 2-1 at home. But they're going to play with quarterback Brandon Weeden now that Brandon Hoyer is officially out for the rest of the season with a torn ACL. And Willis McGahee is now their primary runner now that they traded Trent Richardson to the Indianapolis Colts. And Jordan Cameron is actually a pretty good receiver. Again, I think he's been pretty well. He's been doing pretty well so far. He has 5 touchdowns on the season. And Cleveland actually has the home edge on the betting line, winning by 3. Going into next week. Other matchups to look forward to: Packers and Ravens are a pretty good game. 1 p.m. on Fox next Sunday. Packers 2-2, Ravens 3-2. One of them they both actually need a win to stay alive moving forward. And the Titans and Seahawks is actually going to be a pretty exciting matchup. Although Jake Locker's going to be out for a couple weeks, Ryan Fitzpatrick, again, he threw a couple interceptions. And he does that a lot. Again, I know from his days in Buffalo. But realistically, this is going to be a good matchup. But again, the Seahawks do play at home. And the Seahawks at home are a really good team. And probably the game that everyone's going to be watching is the Saints and the Patriots. Huge game for New England as they just dropped one to the Bengals as they play a high-powered offense in the Saints. And Drew Brees is not Andy Dalton. He is a much better quarterback. He's able to move around the ball. And if they don't have an answer for Jimmy Graham, that's going to be a rough day for the Patriots. But they may get Gronkowski back, the Patriots. And if they get him back, that's going to be absolutely huge for Brady, whose receivers really are not that great. I mean, if you look at them, really, Aaron Dobson and Kembrell Tompkins, their top 2 receivers. And don't get me wrong, Julian Edelman's pretty good. Amendola gets injured. And so that's tough for Brady. Obviously, he usually makes the most of what he has, which is something that is really impressive from a future Hall of Fame quarterback. But late in his career, he's got to be able to. If he wants one more ring, he's got to make these guys work for the ball. And again, if they can't catch it, what else can Brady do? He can't throw it to himself. And obviously, next Sunday night, the big game, Redskins and Cowboys, that's going to be huge implications moving forward. As the Redskins want to move up to 2-3, and the Cowboys don't need to drop another game in Big D again. And I don't know how Robert Griffin's going to be. I mean, in the early part of the season, he usually just plays well in the second half. But by that point, they're always trailing and not doing really well. And realistically, I don't know what to expect from the Redskins. They're 1-3 right now. But if they can get together on defense, I mean, don't get me wrong, I'm not blaming it all on Robert Griffin III. Their defense has been absolutely awful. But considering that the offenses that they've been playing in the early part of the season, can you blame them? And Tony Romo threw for over 500 yards today. So if they can contain him, which is going to be a really difficult task considering all the weapons that he has. If you saw what Des Bryant was able to do today, he was phenomenal. I mean, three of Romo's receivers were over 100 yards, and Terrence Williams is proving himself to be a really good number 2. And don't forget about Jason Witten, who is one of the best tight ends in the league when it comes to passing tight ends. And we'll see. I mean, I don't know. That's going to be a really good matchup in itself. And the Colts and Chargers, depending on what happens tonight in Oakland between the Chargers and the Raiders, this is going to be a good matchup for both teams. I think this will be for Andrew Luck's first game on Monday Night Football, so the stage will be all for himself. There's going to be no one. It's just him and his team and Phillip Rivers and the Chargers. That's going to be 2 exciting games to watch moving forward. A lot of questions, though, from some other teams. Obviously, are the Bears for real? I mean, they started out really well. Have lost a couple games in the last couple minutes. And the Giants, obviously, they're not good. I mean, they're playing on Thursday night on NFL Network. Are the Bears for real? I think that's one question that a lot of people want to answer. That's going to be a tight race. Again, like I said, the Lions are 3-2. The Packers are 2-2 right now. But But the Packers, I'm sure, can pick it up when you have the bad man himself, Aaron Rodgers, leading the way. Are they a team? Are the Bears a team that can contend for a wild card spot? Are the Bengals for real? They take on a Buffalo team that, yes, they did lose their starting quarterback E.J. Manuel for a couple weeks, but they're going to have Jeff Toole start for now. They might bring in some quarterbacks. They're looking at Dennis Dixon, who's played around the league a little bit, and Pat White, the former West Virginia quarterback, because obviously they want a quarterback that is mobile and can run spread offenses, and both those guys had success in college running it. Jeff Toole, really not as good. 4-22 as a starter in Washington State. There's a reason why he was an undrafted rookie and didn't start the second half of Washington State's season a couple years ago. And there's a lot of questions. Obviously, Toole has a decent arm and he played well in the preseason, but this is against first-team offenses where they can really light you up if you don't get rid of the ball right away. For the Chiefs, an unbelievable start. Like I said, Alex Smith, I think you could start to take the game manager tag off him a little bit because they're 5-0. No one thought that Andy Reid and Alex Smith would be as good as they are. Don't get me wrong. They would be a bigger improvement than 2 wins. I think that was no question. But when you look at it, no one ever thought that they would be beating teams that really they shouldn't beat. I mean, if you look at the early part of the schedule, yeah, they've had some teams where realistically they're not that great. Jacksonville's 0-5. New York, the Giants are 0-5. Tennessee was a pretty good team. Philadelphia was a team that had was pretty good as well. And Dallas is, again, they can light it up and they shut Tony Romo down. So I mean, look at their schedule moving forward. It's not a terrible schedule. I think they can win the next three of their next 4 at the very least. They play at Oakland, at home against Oakland. They play at home against Houston. They have another home game at Cleveland, and it's really difficult to play at home at a Candlestick. I'm sorry, at Arrowhead if you're an opponent going to Kansas City, and then they have their next game at Buffalo, who is really struggling right now with quarterback issues, like I mentioned earlier, and then they have their bye week. Coming off the bye, they do play Denver 2 of the next 3 games, which is really going to be an indicator moving forward of how good the Chiefs are and who's really going to win that division, because they play at Denver and then at home against San Diego in Week 12, and then Week 13 they have Denver at home. And again, Kansas City, really good defense. They're able to shut opponents down, but we'll see moving forward. And again, other matchups realistically, I mean, the line. This is actually one thing that I found funny. The line for the Jaguars and the Broncos right now is set at 27. If I'm Denver, if I'm anyone betting, easily take the over right now, because you saw what they did to Dallas. And considering that Blaine Gabbert's out and they have Chad Henne in as quarterback right now for the Jaguars, this is going to be brutal. I'm thinking this is going to be Ohio State versus, I don't know, North Texas. No disrespect to North Texas or anything, but it's going to be, I feel like they could put 70 up on the board, which is saying a lot for their Broncos offense, and probably saying more really about how questionable the Jaguars defense is right now. All right, we're going to take a short break, but when we come back, we're going to talk about some college football and some huge games that came down to the wire are early in conference play, which are really important as they move forward. You're listening to the Spicy Sports Show with Sam Cerrone on Spreaker Radio. And welcome back to the Spicy Sports Show with Sam Cerrone on Spreaker Radio, coming to you live from Elizabethtown, Pennsylvania. We know why we're playing this song. We're going to talk about some college football. And honestly, a lot of teams in the top five really were unfazed by their opponent. Alabama playing Georgia State, Oregon playing Colorado, Clemson playing Syracuse. Other teams, and Louisville beating Temple. There's a lot of teams in the top 10 that really face some tough competition this week. And let's look at some of the scores from over the weekend. Actually, going back to Thursday's games,